Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith,
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
and we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 92092 for November 15th, 2021. Microsoft Surface SE launches. And of course, this is about Microsoft Windows 11 SE and the Surface Laptop SE this week that we're going to be talking about. But of course, each week we review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And first, we do the articles from the personal productivity blogosphere and audiosphere. And so, Augusto, what is our first article this week?
So our first article this week, it's about journaling. It's called How Journal Can Help You Keep Moving Through Loss and Uncertainty. And it is an interview with Maggie Smith. Maggie Smith, a poet, and she began writing herself, as she was unraveling her 18-year marriage, or was ending the marriage, and start posting in social media. And she did not expect that her fans were getting motivated by all this, that came to produce a journal that is called Keep Moving. And there are 52 exercises to help you keep moving, to help you get out. And the rest of the article is an interview that this journalist do with Maggie Smith. It is a really delicious uh, article to read, but there is something that she said that I really like in the interview. And say one of the favorite lines in the journal is, "You deserve the compassion you extend to others." And the journalist asking, "What do you mean by that?" And Maggie answered, "Sometimes we have an aversion to what we perceive as self pity. But self compassion is about treating yourself with the same care you will give a friend or even your enemy if they came, with the burden they're carrying. If someone said to you, 'I'm going through a terrible divorce,' or 'I just lost my job,' or 'I'm depressed, I, I can't even shower,' don't tell them what is wrong with you, or, 'Well, if you were a different kind of person, this will have,' think about how can you help them to keep moving.
Yeah, and actually embedded on that page is a video about Alison Camerota. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she's the CNN anchor, and about how she writes and the book she wrote based on that. And she gives some tips on writing as well. And I thought that was really useful and interesting as a complement to the article itself and the book itself. That was the subject of the article. Wonderful. All right, moving along to our next article.
So our next article is why it pays to be an optimist. And well, the article talks about what is a pessimist, what is an optimist. If you look for the evil, you will find it. It's, optimists will make your life better. Optimists behave different. And it was interesting because I don't think anybody is fully optimistic or fully pessimistic. Well, maybe the later, I don't know, but at least not fully optimistic. But it's true that we need to pay attention to those things that the optimism come naturally to us, and those things that the pessimism comes naturally to us, so we can balance and we can get them more close to that optimism level. As a
I don't,
person who was really pessimistic, and now it's a lot more optimistic than what it was a really nice read.
Yeah, I thought the article is not only good, but it's also important for us all to recognize that as the article, author notes, Furrow notes, the reality is that you can always focus on the negative. But if you lean into the positive, you're always going to have a better experience in life. And I take this akin to the idea that if you allow someone to make you angry or fearful, the emotional experience is one of loss because you're giving up control of your emotions to the other person. And I think that is the same thing to your circumstances or environment. If you can wrest control of your circumstances or environment, that doesn't mean you're always going to not be angry, upset, or those kinds of things. I know personally from experience about that one. But the idea is that if you lean into the positive, then you're going to have on the whole, at least let's say on average, you're going to probably then have a better life experience. And so I really appreciate the concept of always focusing on the positive, because the negative is always going to be there. It's not like
It's
you can
always
get rid of all of that. You know what I mean? So I really appreciated Darius's perspectives there. All right, next up, how to get over the fear of responsibility and achieve more in life. What was this all about?
This was a great article. It reminded me of just said, make your motto. What is your motto? What is your mantra? Take personal responsibility. Change your perspective. Then eat that frog. That is, do that thing. Mark Twain was just two frogs. Eat the ugly ones first, and then the other part is what they call choose to run with the lions. And it tied with what we were talking. You can see who is your inner circle. Is full your inner circle of people optimistic, look into the potential, or not, or is the other kind? Because if you have, life is messy, it's busy, everybody's life is. But if you are with the crowd that is looking all those negative aspects, well, you will drown. But it made me think a lot about personal responsibility. When I coach and I show the connecting visible dots framework, that is the first pillar, the pillar of totality. And the pillar of totality is nothing other than taking responsibility, taking ownership about the good and especially the bad that is happening in your life. And how to change that and how to focus so you can really change the perspective of what is happening.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody, and myself included, to think through the fact that when we just think about creating a motto, I was actually intrigued by the concept of creating a motto. For me, I don't need something short and pithy to necessarily help me in this way, but I appreciate the fact that most people will want something that they can quickly and easily come back to as that. And so I have a personal mission statement. It's probably a paragraph, maybe a little bit longer than a paragraph of text that tells me what true north is, right? What compass north is for me in my world. And that has been adjusted very few times over the past 25-ish, maybe 30 years. And I have appreciated having that thing. And so I really, it emotionally holds anchor for me to the idea of having a motto or a mantra that you can utilize. And of course, I know I've probably not said it here, but I'm a huge fan of the book Question Behind the Question by John G. Miller. And it's one of those really short books that packs a punch in terms of personal responsibility and personal accountability. And so this article really unearthed many of those, principles that I've just taken for granted in a lot of ways. So this is a nice refresher in that sense. And of course, changing perspective and not procrastinating and those kinds of things, just all are kind of fun things to remember. And what's the most recent book written by Brene Brown, Dr. Brown? About courage, that also came to mind as I was reading the book. And so I was like, each of these like paragraphs relates to a book that resonated in my life in some
Yeah,
way, shape, or form, from Covey and The Eighth Habit to all of these others. So it was a nice kind of reminder for me of those pieces there.
yeah, it is
All
a
right,
really good article.
all right. On to our final article in our blogosphere topics.
Three things no one ever told you about making friends on adulthood. And three things are: you need to be proactive. It will take time, a lot more than what you think. And some people are initiators and some people are not. You know, I have make a lot of friends as an adult, mostly because I move out of the country, and leave all my childhood friends behind. And I have lived in different places, and yeah. And when I was reading at this, I have never make friends as an adult has not been maybe terrible hard for me, or I have never felt that way, and I have made incredibly good friends. But I as I was reading this, well, I am proactive about that. I know it will take time, and I have, that patience. But also, I understood that I am what they call an initiator. So I have that, and I have that attention to detail, and I care about learn about the person, and take that time to build that. And maybe for that, I'm lucky I hit the tree out of the tree, and maybe that's the reason it's easy for me. But I have seen the other side of that. I have seen the people who are not proactive, you know, don't take the time, and they are not initiators, to struggle to make those friendships after, as an adult.
Yeah, I think the important thing that comes out of the article for me is that if you find yourself as an adult not having close friends, it is not uncommon, right? It's something that happens over the course of life, that it takes more time as an adult, according to some of this research that was done, that younger people have a lower threshold, a lower time threshold, that is, to become close friends. And for adults, it ends up being a much longer period of time, if not a third longer, in order just to become friends, in the close friends category. And so it just takes more time. And I know myself, having moved around and those kinds of things, my friends being far away, even though we stay in close touch, it is not the same as having close friends, proximity wise, to
Right.
be able to build those friendships. And it is incredibly difficult. It is tough to be able to make those friends in person without establishing the right groups of people, engaging in the right groups of people. And for anyone who's moved in the past year and a half, 2 years, it's got to be even more difficult, because you didn't have the infrastructure in place to be out and about with people. And so you may have found yourself in a place where you haven't met people face to face in that time frame. And just know that you're not alone. You know that it does take time, but by doing some initiating, but also validating or confirming or affirming to people who are initiators that you are interested in a friendship, is also important. It's kind of like dating, right? You got to make sure that you send the right signals without being, unfortunately, unlike dating, you don't want to send the wrong signals, but you want to make sure that you send the right signals to people who you want to be friends with, and let them know that that's something that you are interested in doing. And so I appreciated the article for that reason, and I highly recommend for anyone who is looking to make new friends in a new location to go ahead and look at that. All right, we have reached our way through our productivity articles for the week, and that means we are going to take a break now for a word from our sponsor this week, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. When we come back, we will talk about all the productivity technology related articles that we found this week, and then we'll continue on the show. See you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud, as always, for the second half of the show. Let's get into our productivity technology headlines this week. Augusto, what's our first article?
So Apple announced business essential service for a small business, and basically they are trying a subscription base. You will be able to do device management, set up on board iCloud storage, Apple support for small businesses that are up to 500 people. And it seems like it's going to solve a lot of problems that these organizations are having into trying to deploy their iPhones and their Macs and their tablets, give them finally the business, a non-third party software to manage all this and what the people can do and everything else. And the price didn't seem bad. It's start at $3 per user up to $13 per user. Depending on the iCloud storage that you have and all that. So it is exciting for me every time I see Apple taking care of small businesses and really getting closer. There is a lot of small business who lives on the Apple ecosystem, and it's good to see them being taken care of.
Yeah, I'm incredibly surprised that Apple did not have this already in place. I'm not surprised. I knew they didn't, but it still surprises me they left this on the table for so long. And there have been other providers who have come along, like JAMF or whatever, however they pronounce their name, who like kind of stepped into that space and did this. I find it a bit I don't know, ridiculous that they're charging money for this. I really feel like this should be a value added service for what they're trying to do, especially since they are so far behind the 8 ball on this. I mean, they are a decade late to the game here.
I agree.
If not more than that. And what they're providing is really just like it doesn't for me seem like you get this built into any IT infrastructure with the license to the tool itself. So like the operating system licenses come with this stuff. So it kind of, it's just odd to me. But either way, I'm glad that they're bringing this to the fore. I think it's important for businesses to be able to have access to this. And I don't think it's a terrible price. It's a range. I think at the lower tier pricing, that's not bad. When you're paying $13 per user per month, then I think it's maybe a little bit egregious. And again,
but it depends, because I'm understanding that the 13 comes with 2 terabytes of storage, so you're paying for that storage. Then it's not that unreasonable. Or it may
right, but why is Apple Care Plus then an extension on top of that? You know what I mean? Like there just needs to be some like I feel like it just doesn't seem whole enough, and so I have a little bit of a problem with the fact that they're not binding together all of these things. Like they're going to put storage in it, but they're not going to put Apple Care Plus into it, and so your employees now have to think, hard and long about which service. Do they need to go to IT? Do they need to go set up an Apple Genius Bar appointment? There's more choices to have to think about, when in reality this should be a very simple, easy process. This should be Apple-y, like it should just feel like Apple and not have to think through these things. And now all of a sudden they're forcing people to have to kind of consider a lot of this in play, when it should just be automatically bundled together. So again, I appreciate that they're solving a problem that has long been an issue on the platform. I remember, the joint venture days, when Apple had launched joint venture, and I thought, oh, this is going to be the beginning of what businesses should be able to experience. They should get this nice customized experience, and it didn't really live up to that. And so I'm looking forward to seeing where this develops. But I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that it doesn't feel as cohesive as a process. I would expect this kind of rollout of Google. I would expect this kind of rollout of Microsoft. I would not expect this kind of rollout from Apple. I really have to say. So. All right, on to our next story.
To our next one. Apple will soon let you pass your iCloud data when you die up to 5 legacy contacts. So you will be able to define who these people are. And in case you pass, Apple will allow these people to come in and access your information. You need to be running 15.2, that is already out. And then you can go, on settings, your name, and then define who is those legacy contact, so that way they can get that.
Fantastic, wonderful. And just know that the other major platforms, Google and Facebook, certainly have these things set up also, and you should set them up. Go set them up. They are so important. You do not want to put people who are having to deal with your loss in some way, shape, or form. It could be mental loss, right? If you, for some reason, become mentally incapacitated, or if you become then physically incapable, or then, the worst case is die untimely. All of those things are traumatic to the people around you. You are causing future stress and trauma to those people by not setting this up for those folks. So not to sound all, grave about it, but really, this really helps it just ease the process for people if those things should come to pass. You hope they don't, but stuff happens. So, all right, on to our next story. Some positive news.
So
Also
let's go
positive
into,
news.
well, let's go to Google Docs now, rolling out a new file review and approval for workspace tiers. And I'm excited about this because I have seen so many companies struggling trying to find small businesses, a way to approve this, and the systems are so complicated. And I love the idea that you now will be able to go file, submit for approval, and get it done.
Yeah, no, this is really great. So this is within Google Workspace, and the idea is that within Docs, Sheets, and Slides, so basically the word editing space, the Excel equivalent, and then of course the PowerPoint equivalent in Slides, you now have a formal document approval program, and it basically locks the system so that nothing can be done with it until the approvals are set into place. So this is just a really good thing for people to be able to say, okay, I want approval, and then once approval sets into place, we can do these things with the document for that purpose. It's available all the way down from Workspace Essentials, which is basically the non-email version of Google Workspace, and then straight on up through all of the other versions. So they're giving it to everyone except Google personal accounts. So personal accounts don't have it. Business starter plans, and then some of the weird other plans that are not particularly useful. But I'm a little shocked by the fact that the business starter plans aren't getting them. I thought they would, but I don't know. Google just decided that personal accounts and the Workspace Business Starter.
Well,
But
I
if you have
they're moving people from business to workspace. They're trying to, at least, so that may be part of give you that extra incentive to push.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they're not giving it to starter folks. I'm guessing they feel like starter folks are not established enough, that they don't have enough employees or maybe that kind of thing to warrant approvals. I feel like that's just kind of a giveaway that they could do, but maybe they'll roll it out to more people over time. I just found it to be a little bit weird that they didn't. They gave it to essentials folks, but they didn't give it to to the business starter folks, which you would think the essentials is below starter, but whatever. All right, on to our next story.
Chrome OS Sharing Hub is receiving copy to clipboard feature.
Hallelujah.
But you see, that was one of those things, as you were surprised. And it was like, when I read the article, I say, really? You cannot do it. And I went to the Chromebook. I get it. I don't use the Chromebook for any of those things. I use it for video mostly. But I was like, really? How you cannot do this a long time ago?
Yeah, so I mean, like the reality is that different than say on Chrome on mobile, where you have to click into the URL bar and then you can click the copy to clipboard functionality.
Right.
It's a little bit more cumbersome on a small screen. On the Chrome OS environment, I mean, you can just basically Control L and then Control C, and you've copied basically the URL to your clipboard. So it wasn't crazy, but if you had your hand on the touchpad and you just wanted to copy to clipboard, you had to basically right click on it and copy. Now it's 2 clicks, and it's 2 clicks in a flow that makes sense to the average non-techie, non-savvy user. And I just feel like that's a good step in the right direction. So, all right.
Our next one is e-ink displays and how they impact our life from Goody Reader. And you and I have been particularly discussing this mostly because I have been considering a device just to take notes. I found a device that we have reviewed in the show called Books that basically allow me to install the Kindle app and notes, and will not do a lot more than that, but it will be a device. And I've been debating if I need the device or it's just my geek wanted another toy. And I have not a good answer yet. But what has been motivating that is the e-ink part. It's the, having a device to read. For some reason, I like more the interface of the app on the Kindle than the actual Kindle. I wish I could deactivate things on the Paperwhites, but instead it gives me all these things that I don't care for.
So do you mean the interface is cluttered?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I've found the same thing about the Kindle. I feel like the interface is just very cluttered. I feel like I want fewer options when I'm navigating the interface, and even to the effect that like it just recently had that new update, and I don't like the new update.
No.
Because I used to be able to access like synchronizing and turning it into airplane mode and turning on and off Bluetooth were very easy, and now it seems like it's just an extra step for me to be able to do some of
Correct.
those things. So I really do wish it was a little bit more streamlined. Anyway, you were saying you were thinking about getting
No,
this
but that is
Boox.
the point. Well, this device it's an ink, and it will allow me to install the Google Store Kindle version, and then it will be an experience closer to what my iPhone or the iPad is. So I've been really considering. What has stopped me is the sharing. It's okay if you do that, then why you don't get another iPad? Kill the colors that you can do it. It's not exactly e-ink, but it will be cheaper and or around the same price, and I can take the notes and and that's where my thinking has been broken. That said, I think the future on ink color displays, it is going to be great.
Yeah, I thought this article was very, very interesting because it tried to enlighten you as to really how e-ink is a part of a lot of our lives today and will become more and more part of our lives. And I felt like the thing that when you told me about buying the books and turning it into basically a tool for taking notes and being able to just absorb content, I thought that's a really great idea because it is a bit disconnected from the rest of your world in a way
It
that
is
is
completely disconnected. Yeah.
right, like, because you live in the Apple ecosystem, and this would be separate from it, and it would force a level of focus that you wouldn't otherwise have if you were able to switch all those things off on another iPad. The thing that I also like about the e-ink is that say that you put that e-ink device down for the next 3 months, you'll come back and it'll like have lost 10% battery, and it'll just continue working. I find that about all of my e-ink devices, and it's remarkable. Like I've had several iterations of Kindles, and the batteries are still powering along just fine. I have had no battery swelling. I don't have those kinds of issues that you have with some of the more high
Same.
powered screens that are just really intensive. Those processes are really intensive. They're just pushing out a lot of heat. And so there was a real value to that. But what the article really like clued me into is how pervasive e-ink is in parts of our world that we don't take to heart. There's so many different spaces where e-ink is coming into labels in supermarkets shelves, so that those things can be automatically updated from a centralized place. That's really brilliant. And actually it was talking about like an alarm clock from I think it's Mudita or whatever, and the brand. And I was like, oh, I want an e-ink display alarm clock. And so I may or may not have purchased a alarm clock that's going to show up in February of 2022. But like there's some really interesting, like think about it. That alarm clock is going to last a long time, and if I'm on the road now, I don't have to worry about having my phone set for an alarm. You can turn off all of those alarms, and you could put the phone out of sight, out of mind, so to speak, and really have an alarm wake you up as opposed to your phone being the alarm. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, these e-ink devices, like this alarm clock, it's just going to last forever. It's really going to be able to keep on ticking for a very, very long period of time, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I love in the article the copy of the Daily Prophet. I think my kid, who is a fan of Harry Potter, will love that. But the problem was, as soon as you allow me to install one app, then I said, "Oh, I can install this other thing. Oh, I can." And I said, "Hold on, stop. If you're going to install everything, why?" So I need an adult who blocked my ability to install anything, so I can really get the most out of the device.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see, and we've talked about this probably 3 or 4 months ago. We talked about the idea of having an e-ink computer display, a monitor that is high refresh rate and really, really slick. And so if we can see more and more of those kinds of devices come onto the market, they take a fraction of the energy that it takes to run these big, high-powered, light-emitting
Mhm.
screens. And so, not that a computer display running e-ink isn't going to need to do those things as well in some way, shape, or form, but just a different beast. It's a different beast when you're trying to be productive and really get something done versus playing, these kinds of computer screens that like they're built for high graphics, high intensity, video gaming, those kinds of things. But if you're not really doing that, then do you really need such a high powered screen in order to be able to see? And the potential benefits, I know that some of the research out there leans toward the fact that e-ink is better for your eyes from a fatigue perspective. If that is true, and if it ultimately ends up to be true, then that also is a great benefit from a productivity perspective, that having displays that are not constantly beaming light at you will be less fatiguing and therefore useful. The other thing I noticed was this magic calendar e-ink display that you can have that basically shows the calendar, and it looks like it synchronizes from with your Google Calendar to be able to see events on it. That definitely intrigues me, and it requires using a Raspberry Pi to power it and so on and so forth. But these are the kinds of things that that's really, really cool to basically have, put up a Raspberry Pi on your wall, and it's a low powered, always up to date calendar. And now you can have that for the family and do that. I've seen larger displays, where you've had a full touch screen with the family calendar and so on and so forth. But I can see having something a little less flashy, kind of nicely sitting to the side so that you can see what's going on for the day. That's a really nice feature. And I feel like there's more to come in the ink space. And this article was really good for kind of priming me for that.
It was fantastic. So our next article is Nook versus Kindle. Which e-book reader is best for you? So what these ebook readers has been is really that. It's they've been the first e-ink devices. And I have them both. I had a Nook many years ago. I had the Kindles since the first Kindle. My wife wanted the Nook, so we had them both at some point. But even that the article makes an incredible comparison, cost, specs, functionality, water resistance, battery life. At the end, for me, is content. And it may be that I have already enough years invested into Amazon, or I always found that I have more ability to do with the Kindle than the Nook. Even that the Nook technically reads EPUBs, I have learned now to open EPUBs into the Kindle, and you can do that. You can do PDF. You can do everything in that device. So I don't really have seen an advantage on the Nook versus the Kindle.
Yeah, I think it just depends upon where you're most inculcated in the world. If you don't want to be a part of the Amazon ecosystem, then the Nook is a clear choice, and it's going to be a decent choice for you.
Yes.
But if you want to be, if you're comfortable with being it, for example, like I'm an Amazon Prime subscriber, I have been for many years. I've been an Amazon subscriber, Amazon user for many more years than that. I'm quite pleased with Amazon. There are all kinds of reasons to dislike Amazon the company, and ask them to be better. But from a services perspective, I'm actually quite a pleased customer. And so Amazon Kindle's library gives me access as an Amazon Prime subscriber to the Kindle First and Kindle Unlimited, and all these other additional services that you can purchase onto. And it centralizes your library in such an interesting way that the productivity benefits I get out of using Kindle, I can email PDFs into my Kindle and it'll turn them into Kindle documents that now reside in my Kindle library, and it's free storage basically for those books. I can have my New York Times subscription and other things automatically delivered to my Kindle in the morning. These are things that just really help me increase my productivity. So that's the thing that you have to think about. Now the Nook is basically they're all just Android tablets. So anything you can do with an Android tablet, you're going to have more functionality with that Nook, but you're not going to have the same ecosystem capabilities as you do with the Amazon Kindle. And so that's basically the thing that I would think about as being the choice factor, and potentially the catalog available to you, because you're going to get a lot more catalog available to you than with Amazon Kindle and the Kindle library than you are going to from Barnes and Noble and the Nook platform. But I think that on the whole, you can probably get by with either if you really want to. Although it's going to be really difficult to switch from Kindle to something else. That's really going to be the big problem. There are ways to do it, and if anybody's interested, I'm happy to walk you through the long, laborious process of going in and downloading all your AZW3 files and converting them and so on and so forth out to EPUB and then uploading them to Nook. You could do it. You could do it, but it takes a while and it's a manual process and blah, blah, blah. But, I think on the whole, it ends up being, what are you planning to do with your Nook? And are you willing to give up potentially some of the access to some books to go over there? And otherwise, I think those are pretty much the main differences in them. I do like, and I know I've said this before, I like the limited functionality of the Kindles. I like the fact that the Kindle can't do much more than read. And that gives me safety in focus on reading, right? When I sit down with my Kindle, it's going to be reading or it's going to be putting it down and staring at the ceiling, right? Those are the options with the Kindle Paperwhite. And it has a light browser, but the browser really isn't all that great. So it forces me to focus, and I like it for that reason. Whereas with the Nook, which I've had in the past, it gives me way too much functionality, and I can waver and go on to other things, and I don't particularly want that for myself. So in addition to the fact that I'm an Amazon Prime subscriber and very happy with the Kindle library managing things by being able to email content in and otherwise, I just end up wanting to stay with the Kindle.
Mm-hmm. Yep, same thing here. So with this, we get to the end of, we have one more news. So Grammarly versus Microsoft Editor, which is better to check grammar? And I have not played with the Microsoft Editor. I have been a Grammarly user for a while. So I tend to go the opposite direction for Microsoft applications. I believe in a different ecosystem, and I'm happy with that. But you use Microsoft enough. How has been your experience with the Microsoft Editor?
Yeah, remarkably, I have tested and played around with almost every single Microsoft, consumer and business Microsoft product that you would come into contact with, certainly within the MS 365 space. But I have not really ever touched Microsoft Editor. I think I installed it once and then just immediately uninstalled it because there was just no reason for me to use it. I'm not a Grammarly user either. I just am, very meticulous with everything that I do, writing wise. And so, obviously I do make spelling errors, but it is the rarity. And so I just tend not to utilize those functions. And then Google Docs does mostly everything else I need in terms of if I do make a mistake for some reason, it's going to catch it both from the spelling side, but also from the grammatical part. And I usually disagree with Google in terms of its stylistic choices, but I like that it tells me. But I've honestly not had that much experience or any experience that is with Microsoft Editor, other than, like I said, I think I've installed it once and was like, yeah, I don't need this. And then when I uninstalled it, I did use Grammarly for a while. And just to put it through its paces, but that was maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago. So it was a long time ago. And again,
it has evolved incredibly.
And I found I didn't need it, and so I ended up, going ahead and just uninstalling the keyboard at the time, or the browser extension, I think was what I had at the time, and I found it to be underpowered for what I needed. And I know you and I have talked offline about the fact that it's gotten much more powerful now, and even was it last week or the week before, where Grammarly has now even put more features onto the platform. Yeah, it's made me think, maybe I would want to try it again. So maybe what we should do is, I'll install Grammarly and test it out for a couple weeks, and then I'll go ahead and install Microsoft Editor and play with it for a couple weeks, and then we can report back, maybe after the new year with those experiences.
Yep.
All right, so those are our productivity articles for this week, and that brings us right along to our productivity resource of the week. Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools, apps, and resources during our weekly journeys to bring you the productivity and technology news that we do. In this segment, Productivity Resources of the Week, we each bring you one, new or old, we might think you like. And so our first one up this week is my app, and my app is my resource actually is a book, and the book is The Extended Mind: The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain by Annie Murphy Paul. And this came to my attention because I was actually researching to actually do a webinar a couple of weeks ago that I did on Evernote and the extended mind. And so after doing, in preparation for doing the webinar, I thought, well, let me read around a little bit more about anything that's contemporary in the space of the extended mind, since the extended mind theory as well as distributed cognition it's been around a long time. So I'd read about Chalmers' work and so on and so forth a long time ago. So I picked up this book and I actually found it to be really riveting, just a really interesting perspective on how intelligence is a part of our external environment, and so it was just a really good book. I think that there's some conflating about the concept of distributed cognition and the idea of not just the extended mind, but thinking through and beyond the extended mind to other areas of not consciousness, but mental activity and mental capabilities. But I highly recommend it if you're interested in that space, you're interested in learning more about the extended mind. It's a really good read. Augusto, what is your pick this week?
So last weekend, I was walking with my iPad, and my iPad fell on the screen, and the screen protector crashed. The screen protectors I use are these Tech Armor ballistic glass screens. I've been using them for years, and they are all the devices. And yes, I have replaced them more than what I care to admit. But let me tell you that the $9 to $14 replacement, I do it with a smile, because I know that the screen of the device is going to be a little bit more expensive, maybe 10 to 15 times more expensive than that. So if you are looking for that protection, and I have them on my phones and the iPads and everywhere else, and again, the iPad mini fell out of my hand, full land directly on the screen, and there was nothing left on that thing. I just peel it off, put it in the trash, put a new one, and no damage to my screen. So it may not be a productivity resource unless you consider that if that screen is broken and I lose my device, it will be really hurting my productivity.
Absolutely. I think security and privacy and physical security is always a part of productivity in that regard. So wonderful resource. Good to know that they are out there doing that work. And so thank you for that resource, Augusto. On to our featured story this week. This week we're talking about Microsoft again, but with a new thing. Microsoft has announced 11 SE, Windows 11 SE, as well as its Surface Laptop SE. What did you learn about this, Augusto?
This seems to be Microsoft's answer to Chromebooks, but they still went more expensive at what Chromebooks are. They made it only available through their education program. Okay. And when I look at the specs, I'm not sure those specs can run Windows that well. That what you are going to provide, then it's a bad experience of Windows. Chromebooks, we may say many things, but they run on nothing. Okay, if you have nothing, that thing can run Chrome OS, and I don't think that's the case for Microsoft, and so I don't understand why they are trying to get into that market instead of let's go to the college kid who needs a more robust machine, who need to do PowerPoints and these things, and let Chrome have the school kids. You are not going to win with this. I get it that Microsoft has enough resources to create one of this initiative every 3 months, but this seems to be a waste of everything.
So this is my take on it, and it comes from a different angle, which is you look at the Surface lineup. These are high-end, high-quality devices. And Microsoft comes out and throws out this plastic piece of garbage for people to give their kids to destroy And I just don't understand why they would mar what they have built in terms of the Surface. I think a
Correct.
Surface, and I think of a nice device, something that I want to own and have and take care of, and it's going to be, a nice build and it's going to take a beating, whatever else. And here they give a device that, one, you can't run this without an education license. So this is a whole different set of parameters. So you can't just buy this for your kid, right? This needs to be a part of a larger ecosystem in enterprise education that buys these devices in bulk and provides them to their students. And so these students are going to grow up having had a terrible experience with the Surface name, and then they're gonna age up into high school where their parents are potentially going to provide them with devices, or they're going to buy their own, or the school is going to issue them iPads, and they're going to have a poor experience with Windows, go to potentially Mac, iPad, iPad OS, or to Chrome OS and say, wow, why did we ever use those terrible Microsoft Surface laptops? And then they go out into the world, go out into the real world, and join a company. And when someone says Surface to them, they're going to have that childhood memory, that indelible memory of having been told and experienced Surfaces being bad. I just can't understand why Microsoft has done this, and I hope that it dies within a year. And that
Well,
way,
I
that way
hope
we
it
can.
does, and I hope they rip that page of that playbook, because they have done this so many times on things like this that, again, I do not understand, because it makes zero sense.
Now, I'll give the devil's advocate here, which is that in the education space, you have a lot of administration and potentially other employees within the education environment who are on Windows. And so having a parallel platform whereby everybody is utilizing the same tools, plus the ability to sell licenses directly tied to those operating systems, gives you an environment that is more controllable and a little bit more seamless for IT, right? Because IT is now managing from a singular portal, right? They're in the Microsoft Admin Center, as opposed to having to jump between Admin Center and Google Workspace Admin Console. So I get it. I get the appeal. But the moment IT has to start swapping out parts on a constant basis with those piece of garbage plastic devices, they're gonna rue the day they bought 400, 1,000 of them for those students. Like I really am sad for Microsoft here to have made this kind of choice, and I hope that they get rid of it and go back to common sense here, which is that they can be like Google Pixel and set a standard, show what could be done, what is possible with really great hardware and really great tied in.
And that's what they have been building with the Surface until they came with this product.
So that's my take on this. I think that Windows 11 SE is also rubbish. I mean, you don't. Why do you want an underpowered lockdown operating system for like I get it. You want something that takes low resources to be able to put onto these lower end devices, but like none of it makes sense to me. And they're not going to be able to make up the market in Chrome OS world. And if I had the choice between Chrome OS, Apple, and then it would be Chrome OS, and then it would be Apple, and then it would be Microsoft Windows, if I were going to give those to children, so why would I choose Windows in any of those regards? You know what I mean? It's always going to be that order.
But not only that, when you make such a cheap looking device, you make me open the browser and find me a Dell or an HP that for not much more money than that can run regular Windows. Then why do I want to put Windows SE into that thing?
Right. And I could just as easily take some really good hardware and throw Chrome OS on it with, Cloud Ready or any of the other tools that are out there and really make it a full-fledged tool. Funny enough, those Windows SE devices are the Surface devices are allowed to install Chrome. So, you can install PWAs from there, probably PWAs from Microsoft Edge as well. And so this whole idea that it's being locked down in this sense is probably going to get kind of eked around the edges by virtue of utilizing those PWAs anyway. So, the notion that somehow this is going to be better for the kids because it has less avenues for like you can't install YouTube and you can't do you're just causing more ire on the part of the educators, because now the educators are like, well, we show all kinds of YouTube videos. We want kids to be able to access this, maybe having some parental controls built into the Google environment, but don't lock us out of full applications because you feel like, it just seems a little bit silly to me. Anyway, that's my take on this all, and your take on it. And so that is our featured story this week, and our unfortunately a little bit dismissive ire regarding the Windows 11 SE and the Surface Laptop SE, which comes in at still $249 plus the license, the OS license in wholesale. So that is what it is. All right, we've got a couple of announcements, and then we can close up. What are our announcements, Augusto?
So this Wednesday, November 17 at 5:30 p.m., we are going to do the test run for ProdChat Live on Twitter Spaces. And it's a time to discuss what the future may be, receive ideas, give ideas, and let's come together to create something cool. And
yeah. So just on that point, for everybody who might be interested, Google Twitter Spaces, that is, allows you to be able to join by audio, and you can listen in, so you don't actually have to speak. And so that's one thing. The other part is that we are recording this, and so anyone who does speak will be caught in the recording, right? So that's just something to pay attention to. And you can also tweet while we are in the Twitter Space. That's the most important thing that I can kind of remind people about or let you know about. So you could be tweeting along with us and letting us know your thoughts in the Twitter chat. So that's kind of the thing there. And I'm really looking forward to relaunching ProdChat and then bringing ProdChat Live, which is our component of the audio component, into this whole ecosystem of weekly engagement. And I've got some really big surprises for everybody. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you what we're doing with ProdChat Live and having everybody attend. So feel free to tune in. You can do it on your phone, on your desktop. So you're not limited in terms of where you can join from device wise to the Twitter Space as well. All right, Augusto, what's our next announcement today?
Our next announcement is Blink, it's a productivity app aimed from frontline workers, raised 20 millions and has a 100 million valuation. I wasn't necessarily familiar with Blink, but their website is really interesting. The information they have, it is really interesting. And I think it has a really powerful niche that could show interesting things in the future.
Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool to see. All right, with that out of the way, we've covered the productivity and related technology news for this week. Thank you to Augusto Pinaud for putting together the show this and every week, and we'll see you next week. Okay, on anythingbutidle.com, you'll find our show notes with links to all the stories, tools of the week, or productivity resources of the week, and some extra stories we actually didn't cover during this live show because we just didn't have enough time. And so those are there. We also have text transcripts, one that's readable and one that's downloadable. So the readable one, you'll see a read more link, click on it, it'll expand and you can read along. The other is the download link, and that'll download a PDF for you to be able to download after the fact. After looking at the show notes there at anythingbutidle.com/092, you can let us know if there's a story we did miss by leaving a comment, going ahead and tweeting or DMing us on Twitter at anythingbutidle. That's our Twitter handle. So at anythingbutidle, you can go ahead and do that, or you can use our contact form on the website. So you can go to contact and then you can fill out the form and let us know. If you have a question or a comment about anything we've discussed during this show, you can do the same. You can also join us in Personal Productivity Club. We have a group dedicated to anything but idle. And so if you go to that link, which is www.personalproductivity.club. And I think actually you can also go to anythingbutidle.com/community. And actually, if you go to anythingbutidle.com/community, you will be able to sign up and join the group directly. So you'll be able to join Personal Productivity Club, and then you'll also join the Anything But Idle group by virtue of doing that all in one fell swoop. So if you want to be productive and cut out a couple steps, go to anythingbutidle.com/community and join us there. If this is your first time watching the live stream or watching the replay, feel free to click the subscribe button on the channel and you'll be notified when we go live weekly. And that way you can join us and comment in the chat and join us in that way. We always love to have live viewers here with us and engaging in the conversation. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, feel free to add us in your favorite podcast app. That might be subscribing or following, depending upon the lingo of your particular podcast app. But of course, we always appreciate you doing that because that sends signals out there to the various folks that we are doing good work. If you enjoyed spending time or listening to us today, you can also leave a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, or if your podcast allows you to go ahead and do that. And so thank you to those who have left ratings, and thank you to those who will in the future. We really appreciate it. So with that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.